roll call, please.
Just want to turn your mic on.
Sorry. Okay. Commissioner Hoff.
Here.
Commissioner Jelasic.
Here.
Commissioner Liebert.
Here.
Trustee Rhodey.
Here.
And President Knudsen.
Here. We have two public hearings this evening. The first, item 2 is the first public hearing, conditional use grant request to allow a new restaurant/tavern as part of a custom personal scent mixing use located at 145 West Wisconsin Avenue, Suite 1. A restaurant/tavern use is only permissible through the issuance of a conditional use grant, section 40.2652. This request is located at 145 West Wisconsin Avenue, Suite 1, PWV 0898-001-003. Is Zone B2 Downtown Business District. Property owner is Joseph Grosh Development LLC. Joseph Grosh owner and applicant is Mixon Lakeside LLC. Tim Steidel, owner agent. I hereby open up the public hearing. Is there anybody here that would like to make a comment as it relates to this particular subject? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium, state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Joe Grosh. I own the building that Mixon Lakeside is going to be in. Just want to say a couple things, is that Tim and Kansas, who are going to be the proprietors for this establishment, are great people. And one of the things that I want to point out that is something that we probably don't think a lot about is that Tim and Kansas are going to be the downtown Pewaukee's biggest advocates. When we were kind of doing the transition with Twisted Vine and their mix-in place, I was kind of unsure what I wanted to do as far as who I wanted to put in the Twisted Vine space. And they really impressed me with how much they worked with Positively Pewaukee, how much they worked with the other groups that are downtown, and just how much that it's their passion to promote downtown Pewaukee and make it the best that it can be. So while you're looking over their proposal and considering their motion, I would just hope you put that in the back of your mind, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment at this time? Okay, well, I'm going to close that public hearing. Item B, conditional use grant request of applicant Tim Steidel, DBA Mixon Lakeside LLC, to develop a seasonal outdoor dining seating area accessory to the proposed restaurant tavern use, using 3 of the public parking stalls situated in the West Wisconsin Avenue right-of-way directly in front of the business located at 145 West Wisconsin Avenue, Suite 1. Building and property owner is Joseph Grosh Development LLC. Right-of-way is owned by the Village of Pewaukee. Property is Zone B2 Downtown Business District. I hereby open up the public hearing on this matter. Is there anybody here that wanted to discuss this matter or talk about it? Anybody? No? Okay. Then we're going to go right on to citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to share their opinions with commission members on any topic they choose. However, due to Wisconsin open meeting laws, the commission is not able to answer your questions or respond to your comments. All comments should be directed to the commission. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers are asked to please use the podium and state their name and address. Is there anybody here that would like to make a citizen comment? This can be on anything that's going on in the village or anything at all. Okay. Then we'll move on to item 4, regular planning commission meeting, approval of the minutes of the regular planning commission meeting dated January 9th, 2025. Everybody's had a chance to look them over. Are there any corrections, comments, as the way they are presented this evening? If not, do I have a motion to approve as presented?
Motion to approve as presented. Rhodey?
Second, Liebert.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, most minutes are hereby adopted. Item 5, old business, we have none. Item 6, new business. Review, discussion, and possible action on a conditional use grant request to allow a new restaurant/tavern as part of a custom personal scent mixing use located at 145 West Wisconsin Avenue, Suite 1, a restaurant tavern use is only permissible through the issuance of a conditional use grant, Section 40.2652. This request is located at 145 Wisconsin Avenue, Suite 1, PWV 0898001003, is Zone B2 Downtown Business District. Property owner is Joseph Garage Development LLC, Joseph Garage owner, and applicant is Mixon Lakeside LLC, Tim Steigel, owner agent. Are there any questions or comments by the Planning Commission as it relates to this particular subject? Anybody have any questions? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I guess,
Yeah,
Mark,
go ahead.
well, this one may have some conditions that the planner wants to go through, so.
So,
Okay.
minimal conditions on this piece. The next has a little bit more. We do have some of our standard conditions on for you when it comes to these type of tavern uses. You know, anything you would add this evening as a conditional use. We do tie it to making sure they complete their liquor license in order to be serving liquor at the establishment. There was no sign package permitted as part of this, so we just like to note that, you know, they'll have to submit for signs separately, and that'll be reviewed under the code. There were a couple of minor conditions that you've seen probably a number of times now from Public Works regarding, you know, televising of the laterals, making sure everything is kind of up to speed with those. But nothing necessarily unique about this. That really, they're just moving from Unit 3 to Unit 1. The next item does have some more unique conditions.
Again, are there any other questions or comments as it relates to this particular topic?
How is the liquor license being handled?
I guess that's not really within the purview of the plan commission.
Okay,
So that would go through the village board. Plan commission's purview is land use only, so.
okay.
It is a
thank you.
condition that they have to get it, but beyond that, plan commission doesn't have jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion from anyone?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the proposal along with the conditions that are mentioned as part of the document.
Do we have a second?
Liebert, will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Do you know how many that was?
It was unanimous, correct?
Well, it's unanimous, okay. I misheard one. Okay, sorry. Item B is review, discussion, and possible action on conditional use grant request of applicant Tim Steidel, DBA Mixon Lakeside LLC, develop a seasonal outdoor dining seating area accessory to the proposed restaurant/tavern use using 3 of the public parking stalls situated in the West Wisconsin Avenue right-of-way directly in front of the business located at 145 West Wisconsin Avenue, Suite 1. Building property owner is Joseph Garage Development LLC. Right-of-way is owned by the Village of Pewaukee. Property is Zone B2 Downtown Business District. Mark?
Yes, thank you. So this is a similar request to what you've seen with the Chocolate Factory and I'm trying to think of the other one, Lakeside Bistro next door, where they want to take up 3 parking stalls along the north side of the roadway there for outdoor seating and tables. Now, this request originally also was seeking to put a hot dog cart in that outdoor seating area. After some additional discussion with Village Attorney and myself today, it was determined that we are going to have to advertise that conditional use portion separately. So next month, the hot dog cart will have to come back as we need to advertise that and specifically get it included on the agenda. So this today, we're specifically looking at that outdoor seating within the 3 parking stalls. Applicant is proposing to enclose them with the similar concrete barricades with the black fence on that the commission has seen from the prior approvals, so this would be consistent with those. Some of the conditions that are a little bit unique when we deal with these elements within the public right-of-way, it does specifically call out that it ties it to their primary restaurant tavern use at 145. It outlines the time frame annually. Every year they do have to renew, not the conditional use permit, but they do have to renew that occupancy type permit of the roadway. One thing that this does, which is similar to when Lakeside Bistro got theirs, is it does require them to kind of allocate 3 stalls on their property specifically for use of the customers of this business. That way, although we're removing public parking, we're making sure those parking spaces are being made up for their business on their direct site. And again, that's the same language that was used in prior applications of this nature, making sure that we're not creating a larger traffic concern. Because obviously, as more of these would move forward, or if more of these would move forward in that stretch, we want to make sure enough parking is being provided. So making sure that we include that condition that we're compensating for the loss of on-street parking for the businesses, I think is important. Again, most of the conditions that are in here are identical to the prior uses of this nature.
Any questions or comments?
Go ahead. You can go.
Okay, I guess I do have a comment. Well, I'm completely agree with the benefit of the outsourced door seating. My only question is trying to fit 2 cars in between the landscaping island and the seating versus moving the 3 stalls right up against the landscaping island that is there. It probably is more of a safety factor, and you are no longer trying to squeeze 2 cars into a 2-car space. You're more wide open on the other side. Understand why they would want to put it on that side of their property, because it's obviously probably got a better view of the lake. But my concern is the safety of having those 2 stalls versus butting up against the landscaping island.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't on the planning commission when we started allowing people to use the parking spots. So I kind of feel like since they have the outside patio area that is so nice, I'm not sure why they need the 3 parking spots. Because, we have a lot of people who want these type of parking spots. Eventually we'll have no parking on the beach. So in my opinion, people who already have outside seating on their current property don't really need the additional parking out in the street, or the additional blocked parking. But again, I wasn't here when you first started allowing this.
I would be more inclined to extend their current seating area, which is larger than anyone else's, directly even with Lakeside, versus giving up more parking spaces.
Yeah, it looks like they'd have enough room and still leave the 5 feet that we need for accessibility, if they wanted to do that.
So their outdoor patio is actually on the adjacent property. It's on property owned by 161 Wisconsin Avenue. So it is kind of leased to that tenant space. Just for the record, that outdoor patio that is kind of on the west side of their building is not actually on the same physical lot.
So they, then why would they request 3 parking spots in front of it if it's not their property?
The reason the 3 stalls were located here is they're adjacent to the 3 from Lakeside Bistro. When looking at it, to Commissioner's question about the 2 spots, we looked at it as it would be potentially more dangerous to have outdoor seating, 2 spots in between, outdoor seating on the other side. So by adjoining them, and maybe the correct solution is we look at moving all of them over, but then, Lakeside Bistros are getting shifted a little farther down. So that is, I think that's a good discussion to have, is if you're going to entertain them, what is the most appropriate location for them?
Yeah, and quite honestly, I didn't realize that they were adjacent to each other, and that makes more sense than I understand. Yeah.
Okay, so Mr. Grosh doesn't own the outdoor seating area?
The outdoor seating directly that is kind of adjacent to
Yes.
This business is not. It is owned by the owner of the building at 161. It is leased, and they can, probably expand on it more if necessary. It is leased to this tenant space from the adjoining property owner.
Well, an extent of property should be an extent of property that you own. So, they shouldn't even be able to ask for this, because if you have an extent of premises, when you're doing a liquor license or serving food, it has to be adjacent to the property that is being served. not a property they don't own.
And that is, I think, to the point of, yeah, you could shift them down a little bit, and they would be directly in front of 145. It's trying to find that balance between safety and location.
So would we then be asking 145 to provide 3 parking spaces and designated in back?
That is one of the conditions included, is that recommendation.
They've done that before. Did you want, yes, go ahead.
I just had a question for the in-kind parking. So when we sort of when we're taking space away from Wisconsin Avenue and putting it somewhere else, is there signage that says like for mixing, like for customers only in the back, or is there any signage that indicates that that's what that's for, or?
Or signage on Wisconsin to direct people back there? I mean,
Yeah, so traditionally it has been done through signage, parking reserved for blank establishment. Now it is seasonal, so there is always that discussion of what is appropriate to make them do is it's only for, potentially 6 months of the year. But I think that's a valid discussion.
but is there any signage on Wisconsin Avenue that directs people to the back? I mean, new people don't even, a transient person coming to enjoy the place doesn't even know there's parking back there. So is there any signage in the front on Wisconsin that says additional parking for mixing in the back? Or,
It's actually supposed to be public parking.
okay,
It's not supposed to be designated for anyone because it is a public spot and can be utilized by anyone.
no, well then,
On a
when do they even need to
very
provide it?
quick look up and down Street View, I do not see anywhere in that stretch of signs that necessarily direct people for any of the businesses to additional parking in the rear. But that's just taking a real quick, scroll down Street View.
I know.
That is correct. It's a hidden gem, actually, as far as parking.
Yeah.
That gets access by Savoy Court.
Yeah.
So it's not directly off from Wisconsin.
Are there any other questions or comments?
So I guess 2 points of clarification if nobody has any further questions at this time, though this may generate more questions. One is if there is a motion inclined towards approval, that should specifically omit any approval related to the hot dog stand. As Mark stated, the hot dog stand is a concession use, which is a separate type of conditional use under our code. So it needs to be agendized separately, and it was not done so here. So this commission's not in a position to make any sort of ruling one way or the other on that issue tonight. But as long as the motion omits any mention of the hot dog stand, that's fine. The second part is, and this is more for newer members of the commission, this type of request has come to the commission previously on several occasions. However, it is not just a normal site plan or business plan application before this plan commission. The outdoor seating aspect is a conditional use under our code. And you may or may not be aware that conditional uses have a very special place in Wisconsin statute, such that a local government's ability to deny a conditional use is subject to what strict scrutiny is the wrong word, but if we're going to deny a conditional use, we got to put substantial evidence and show why we're denying that conditional use. So it's not just a matter of neighborhood comments or lack of desire to do something. There needs to be adequate evidence in the record to support such a denial. If an applicant is otherwise willing to meet the requirements of our code and any conditions this commission sets forth with the conditional use, the village is really put in a position where we have to approve that use, and if not, we need to show our work as to why. So I make those comments for the newer members of the commission. We've had extended discussions on this, but I just want everybody to be aware that this is a conditional use, so there's added requirements and things that have to be taken into consideration as you discuss this.
Yeah, but my question still stands. A conditional use, in my opinion, should be adjacent to the extent of premise, or you could say, I want parking down the street by the park shelter. I mean, if you're not tying it to the property, and this doesn't tie to the property, so I still feel like it doesn't meet the conditional use.
Well, it is tied to the property
It's tied to a lease piece that's not even owned by these people.
but it is leased, so they do have leasehold rights to the property.
How long is the lease? 1 year, 2 year, 99 years?
Between the property owner and the lessor.
Okay.
This is a similar situation that was previously approved by this commission. So that, I guess, would lead.
Okay, that's what I don't know. So we previously approved an extent not in front of the right property?
There was a previous approval of a outdoor seating in this location for the previous tenant in that space. So there's a very similar approval to, has already been made by this commission to what is before you right now.
I've never seen that in use.
There were issues with that particular applicant where they didn't follow through on some of the requirements, and I don't think they ever put that use into action. But they did receive approval from this plan commission, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
I believe the cost of buying those concrete embutments they're not cheap. And at the time, I think the applicant was unable to come up with that money to do that. But yes, it was approved at one time.
Do we know if it was these 3 spots, or was it the one and the 2 closest to the, was it the same spot?
Same exact spots.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just so clear, I removed my objection, my original objection. In looking at the justification for putting it in location, you're less exposure and safety issues by putting it that way versus having safety issues on both sides. Yeah.
Someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the proposal with the conditions that are mentioned, without the hot dog cart information, which will be covered at the next meeting.
Liebert will second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Could I just make a comment for the record that if it's possible for the city administration or the village board to maybe consider looking at some sort of public signage to direct people to the back. As a resident, I would just hate for people to, I know how sensitive parking is, but I would just hate for people to drive past and see all the spots full, and we all know how downtown gets in the summer, but people, especially those who might be coming from out of town, might not realize the additional parking. So maybe if village staff could maybe consider just looking into that. Again, there's probably a cost, I know, but
We'll carry that to the board.
just
Yeah.
passing it on.
Yeah.
As my elected official.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Are there any other comments or questions? Okay, then there is a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion is hereby carried. Item C, review, discussion, and possible action on the proposed business site plan to construct a 5,300 square foot UW credit union. This 1.102 acre parcel located at 1267 Capitol Drive, PWV 0902-991, is Zone B1 Community District. Property owner is UW Credit Union. Applicant Aiden Sayer, KEE Architecture. Mark, did you have anything that you'd want to touch on?
A couple of items, if you don't mind. Obviously, this is a redevelopment site, so significant redevelopment. One of the largest impacts with this redevelopment is potential for significantly less hard surface on the site. Right now, it's almost 63%. This goes down to about 50%, so it's always nice to see that reduction in hardscaping, more grass, more landscaping. A couple of elements specifically I want to draw Plan Commission's attention to as part of this discussion. First, parking. Code requires 26 stalls. There are only 25 stalls located on site as part of this plan, with 19 additional spaces being provided per an easement to the north. The code specifically enumerates that in these situations, Plan Commission has that or to say, okay, the 25 plus the 19 is sufficient based on this use, but it is something for Plan Commission to consider and has to specifically approve as part of this. Additionally, just a couple of elements that do not meet the exact code that are worth discussion, and they're largely related to landscaping. A couple of notes in there for the street planting trees. Right now, they're indicated at 2 inches. Code requires 2.5. So that is something Plan Commission could choose to approve a waiver on, or the applicant can just kind of reallocate those up to 2.5 inches. There is some landscaping shown on the east side of their parking. Code specifically enumerates on that it is a hedgerow of screening. In this case, the proposed landscaping type is more of bushes that would not constitute a complete hedgerow. So Plan Commission can make that consideration of, I think they call them snow white mocking oranges is the exact species. They're not kind of a hedgerow, they're individual plantings. That part of the code is in there for looking at, lights from traffic. So people are backing in, backing out kind of thing. And then finally, there are no landscape islands proposed in this instance. They're landscaping the edges of their parking lot on the north and south. So again, Plan Commission can choose to say, okay, are you meeting the intent of the ordinance by not having islands in the middle, but kind of treating them as parking islands on the end caps of that. Outside of that, in large, the rest of the code is being adhered to outside of those couple elements that are worth some discussions for Plan Commission. The conditions that are present in the report are pretty consistent with how we have done these site plan of operations in the past. Just giving, approval of the final landscaping plan, making sure that once they resubmit it, that it meets whatever you would decide tonight.
Are there any questions or comments by commission members?
Is there any representatives here from the company?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you know why the snow white mock orange were selected versus, what is the benefit of those versus hedgerow?
I'm PJ Thayer with UW Credit Union, by the way. Actually, we haven't had that species on our property yet. It was selected by our landscape architect. We talked to him today. He did say they kind of grow together and kind of create a little bit of a hedgerow when we talked to him today. But what we'd like to do is try to keep it as low as possible and still have maintained visibility to the building just for the safety. Police drive by, they can see into the building and see if there's somebody doing something inside they shouldn't, or somebody comes out to their car with some money. We'd like to not have too many things to hide behind for staff and for members. So that, we're requesting that to be hopefully looked at as a good reason. And the same with along to the south, we didn't have a whole lot of trees and landscaping for that same reason. There's the building or that property kind of dips down from the highway, and it's really I drove by there on the way here, and you can barely see probably the windowsills of the existing Applebee's, so it's kind of dipped down a little bit. Which case, if there's somebody sneaking around looking in windows, it's a little bit hard to see into the building. So we tried to keep the front pretty clean. We do have a lot of landscaping around our building. Actually, I think we exceed the shrubs and bushes by quite a bit. A lot of decorative landscaping there. So that was kind of the main reason behind trying to keep things short and tight as we could possibly. The reasoning on the islands is we found that the islands we get a lot of trips and falls on landscape islands because you're stepping out of your car, whether it's a passenger or the driver. People tend to twist their ankles. It's a little bit harder to maintain. They do a lot better job of salting and snow plowing if there are no islands. Most of our trips and falls seem to be in stalls that abut islands. A lot of times those islands get trees, those trees get overgrown, and then people get poked in the eye by a branch and stuff. So as an organization, we try to avoid islands any chance we can get. We think it's safer for our members to have that as such. So that's kind of where we landed on our site plan. Anything further? Any questions?
Are there any other questions or comments? Would someone like to make a motion then?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the proposed business site plan to construct the 5,300 square foot UW Credit Union per the materials in the packet presented by staff.
Do I have a second?
I'll second. Jurassic.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Further discussion?
did have a quick question maybe for the attorney, and then
Yes.
I know he's gonna tell me it's out of the scope of the planning commission, but it's more of just a question. Is this tax exempt? Is it tax exempt property?
That I honestly don't know. I'm in the construction side of things, so.
It is outside the scope of the commission. So we can certainly, staff can look into that for you.
Okay, I just didn't know. Good. As a taxpayer, I would hate to see a building that's providing tax money, and then it means everyone else's taxes go up, so I'm just curious.
I do not believe so, but I don't want to speak either.
Thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion is hereby carried. Good luck, gentlemen. Okay, item D, review, discussion, and consultative feedback to applicant MSI General regarding a concept to construct a 4,300 square foot automobile service use car wash located at 120 Simmons Avenue, this 1.0 acre B2 downtown business district zone property is owned AAM Investments LLC. Mark, I think you have a lot to say on this.
Yeah, village administrator and myself met with the applicants here a couple weeks ago. They are investigating the site for a potential car wash use, and looking at the zoning code, presently the zoning would not permit that. B2 does not allow that land use. So they would be looking at potential zone change to either include a plant development overlay. For reference, that's how Quick Trip to the south of the site proceeded with their site development plan. It's also zone B2, but it's B2 with a plan development overlay district. That's how they were permitted to construct their establishment. Otherwise, they'd be looking at zoning to an industrial district, which is what the properties to the north and west of this site are. And in addition to that zone change, seeking a conditional use. Those are the ways that the automotive-related use could be done at this site. In having that discussion with them, and before they, invest too much in the property and determine if they want to move forward, we felt it was appropriate tonight to utilize kind of that consultation element that Plan Commission provides, have a chance for them to come in and kind of show you what they're looking at doing, and have that kind of open, constructive discussion on, that land use, how it fits there, and if a zone change could potentially be appropriate.
Questions or comments?
Was there a TIA? Will there be a TIA done if this is just preliminary?
So none of that would have been decided at this time, but
Okay.
that is something that, if it is a concern, could be done.
Well, there's a lot of traffic from the post office and from Quick Trip, and this would generate a lot of traffic on a nice day. I don't know if those signals are correct.
Anyone else? Well, I guess nobody else is gonna say something, I will. I looked this over, and I actually went out to your MSI out there, right? I went out and looked at how you're running your other one out in Oconomowoc, and I found it very nice. You do a nice job. But I also noticed the day I was there, the traffic was already into the Quick Trip and going out the Quick Trip driveway, which kind of scared me. And my concerns are looking at that and looking at the property down there, and taking in consideration that in the summer, when we've got a lot of weeks that are clean and nice, it's not going to be as busy. But these past few weeks, where the temperature's been going up and down, I've been watching the car washes after I learned about this, and they've all been very, very, very busy. And I've got one over by me where I live, and that's a self-serve and a drive-through, but it's only where you drive in, you gotta wait. And luckily, there were a lot of people I saw drive in, drive out, because they just weren't gonna wait. Plus, they were starting to get close to the road. My concern is that on those really busy days, I could conceivably see people pulling up to that stoplight, wanting to get their car washed, and there's already a car on that side of the road, and they'll sit at the stop sign or the stoplight and wait. So then, now we got one car there, now another one behind him. He wanted to go to the post office, but he can't get to the post office because he has to go around that car. And I could see some issues there. I just think, unfortunately, I think it's not a good location, in my opinion, for a car wash. Just by looking at how you've got your traffic patterns set up, you've got one lane that's gonna go through the car wash, and I know what you're thinking, you'll stagger, probably, right? On the two, because you got two lanes coming in off the road, and you got those two cars going into where the backs are. Well, when the backs are full, which I've noticed at Jilly's, sometimes the car backs are filled, and then people start to pile up wherever they can park and wait for somebody to get away from the back. So that means there's a good chance that that one area where you're now turning left to go into the back, because some people might do their vacuuming before and then go through the car wash. I have too many concerns about that, and I know they go fast, because I use Jilly's quite a bit, and it has nothing to do with because I'm using Jilly's. I use them all. Okay, I use them all in town. I just don't see that corner as a car wash corner. I just can see that this is gonna be a real problem down the road. And I don't want that problem to happen, and then, people say, well, who's the idiot who let that go in there? Because it's just, if you were over on my side of town, I'd have no problem. But I know there's not as many people. Well, there are still a lot of people over there, but you don't have the exposure off of Capitol and 16. You do on 16, but it's more set back a little bit. But it is a lot more open, a lot more space to put a car wash, bigger property, that type of thing. But that to me, that lot is just too small for a car wash, in my opinion. And I'm not comfortable approving something like that. Would you like to come up and say something, sir?
Good evening. Will Lefty, do you need an address?
Please.
34311 Valley Road, Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. So this is a preliminary site plan. This was thrown together within probably 24 hours just to get in front of you guys to have a discussion. The Oconomowoc site that you mentioned has 15 vehicles stacking on site. We like to have 30 to 40 now going forward. So all the stacking that occurs on site and doesn't overflow to any roads. On a busy day on this site, 30 car stacking should be sufficient to never have an issue with going onto the public road. We're fortunate in Oconomowoc that when we do have the overflow, that road that it's overflowing on is a private road. Mm-hmm. So it's not a public road. Would you allow us to make tweaks to get the stacking that we feel is necessary to never have an issue with cars going onto the city street? Is that something you're open to?
Could you walk us through the flow? Because I think I'm a little stuck.
Okay.
So I can see the turn in and the double cars.
So we run things a little differently.
Okay.
The backs are for paying customers.
Okay.
that lane where the two vehicles coming out of the pay stations going to the left, that's what we call a bailout lane.
Okay,
Sometimes members go in, don't want to get washed, just want to use the vacuums. Other times it's a situation where if a car has rust or a rack of some kind, that lane allows them to bail out and not go into the car wash for a car wash.
okay.
Okay.
But he has to pay before he gets to that point, doesn't he?
Refund. It's a membership.
okay.
Potentially it's a refund if it's a paying customer or it's a member that just wants to come in and use the vacuums.
So you'll have somebody out there.
Absolutely.
In this concept, you're essentially showing 30 cars, almost 30 cars lining up, right?
Right now, but like I said, this was a meeting with Mark and Matt, and it was like, hey, let's get this in front of the Plan Commission. Can we whip something together to make sure we can get a car wash on the site, and then we'll make the tweaks as necessary based on your comments.
Okay, so then the exit you show coming out of the tunnel,
Correct.
you could go straight if you're not vacuuming, even though that exit show?
Absolutely.
Okay, because it kind of shows
So-
like you have to go left.
Obviously, we're membership-based business where it's about 60-40, 70-30, depending on the 70% membership using the car wash, 30% paying customers. A lot of members get their car washed, they're not vacuuming. They're going straight out on the road to run their errands.
So the idea is that we either have one lane where they go to the vac station and leave, or they go into the tunnel car wash. When they come out of that, they can come back into the vac station
Correct.
and then leave back out that
That
second
would be a
exit.
2-lane road coming out of it. But like I said, this is preliminary.
No, that's okay. I just wanted
Okay.
to make sure I understood it.
And ideally, we would like to get 3 lanes in there, come in, wrap around, and have it open up potentially to 3 lanes. Have a dedicated member lane, and then 2 lanes that either our members can use or a paying customer.
Okay. So we've had, 3 weeks with the additional stoplight on the other side of Highway 16, in this general area. We've obviously had a lot of construction, so we have construction on our mind and how many backups we see on a daily basis. We also have the business across the street where all the employees park on that particular Simmons Road, and then of course we have our post office there. This would be the 4th car wash within Village of Pewaukee 4 square mile, directly across the street from a car wash. I don't know if that is the best spot. I kind of have to agree with President
We are
Knudsen.
different than Quick Trip.
Oh, of course you are.
We are currently right next to Quick Trip that has 2 car washes.
Yes, in Oconomowoc, yep.
We're local business owners in a sea of, national companies within your community. We're 2 local guys. We want to give the opportunity for our customers and our members to have multiple sites within the Lake Country area to get their vehicles washed.
There's a beautiful empty lot across on Ryan Street from Kirkland.
Do you have anything you want to add?
So if you came back, you would also, tweak the site plan. I'm still having, the traffic engineer in me is having trouble with this coming in out of the vacuum stations and leaving. I feel like cars could hit each other right in there. So I feel like you could probably fix it if you had time to, more than 24 hours. I think you could do that. I'm not saying I love a car wash here, but I assume you've done your marketing to know that you would survive.
When I look at the concept, obviously you guys have done your homework. You've been in the business. I'm not going to tell you, what your business should be, whether this is a good spot, because you've done your homework on that. It makes sense. I look at the 30-car load or whatever improvements that you're going to be making to even make it even better. I mean, is it any dissimilar to a Sunday morning at the current proprietor as far as the number of cars that are there? So the traffic concerns on my part, I really don't see it.
Okay.
Now, would I have a personal preference that this gateway to the tourism part of the Village of Pewaukee have something else besides? I probably would, but that isn't my decision on that. We have this proposal that meets the requirements that are set forth by our ordinances and things like that. So I think I'm not concerned about the traffic. I think the pieces that you put together and the improvements that you're going to make as far as the load, the car load. I mean, if there's 30 cars sitting there, I'm driving by. Okay.
If you're the 30th car in line, you're probably getting your car washed within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a Quick Trip, if you're at 8th or 9th in line, it's 45 minutes.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the business model.
Yeah.
Okay, this is.
It is, it's gorgeous.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. Christopher Mullet, 935 Emerald Drive, Erin, Wisconsin. One of the co-owners with Will Letfe here. I think the feedback has been really helpful. Really appreciate it. I just want to elaborate on a couple things. One, I don't think it's out of the realm for you to be concerned about traffic. We've experienced it over in Oconomowoc before. And you've probably experienced it other car washes and other busy businesses around. So I think, you mentioned TIAs. I don't know exactly what that entails, but, if we need to do some studies to figure some of this stuff out, to show you a little bit more of a concrete documentation of what we can and cannot sustain within the village, we would absolutely be willing to look at doing that. As far as the layout goes, he mentioned it, but I would like to just elaborate one more time. We just whipped this thing up to show you a concept. We already know we could probably add another 10 cars worth of stacking. We already also know that we could probably add another 5 more back stalls. And one thing that you said that really hit me, I was going to call you commissioner, but that's not the appropriate.
Just call me Bob.
The gateway to the city. One of the things we've done recently, and we are happy to keep looking at, is our architecture. If you could scroll to the photos of the building itself.
It's beautiful. We love it. I mean, it's gorgeous.
Thank you. And we tried. Oconomowoc is much more barn looking than this one. We tried to make this one a little bit more neutral, depending on the municipality. We still wanted to maintain our brand, but where I was going with that is 2 things. One, we can obviously make improvements if there are gateway to the city sites that you want to see. The other thing is, as I was looking at the layout, one of the thoughts is shifting the building over and putting the parking in the back, so that when you drive up, you don't see a bunch of cars stacked up. You see a nice looking building. And honestly, it would probably be the nicest building as you pull in right there between the gas station, the Quick Trip, and the industrial buildings. So there's a lot of things we can do if you can give us the feedback and just give us the opportunity to keep working through this. And I think you would find that not only would we be a nice looking place, but it's a nice place to be. We play family-friendly music outside. A lot of people come and hang out. They all get to know each other. I want to say they have their dogs. They're not supposed to have their dogs, but they do. And we got to tell them, keep your dog on the leash, keep it right there. And people hang out and they talk about what's going on in the community. We employ approximately 30 people per location, 4 to 5 full-time. We have the rest of them are high school kids. We have pretty strict requirements for these kids. We want them to look people in the eye. Good morning, good afternoon. We don't want them sitting there on their phones. Come on in. We want to teach people to go to the next level. So we want to be a family-friendly place. Not only that, just in Oconomowoc alone, we've already raised over $35,000 for nonprofits as well as local charities, or local nonprofits as well as statewide charities. And we are participants in the community. So we would like to think that you could look at us as good community participants, not just a national organization that's, gonna have one fundraiser a year or something like that. We support Moonlit Movies, we support the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, a lot of different organizations in Oconomowoc. So one other thing I wanted to add for you guys.
Are there any other comments or questions?
I just had some initial thoughts. I mean, I think for location-wise, I think it's appropriate. I mean, it's right there off of 16 in Capitol. It's in an already industrial area. I know the one in Oconomowoc, I have family there. It looks really good. I of course have concerns with traffic because, especially when that whole intersection was under construction, I tried to avoid it on a good day. But also thinking too, like, again, from a resident's perspective, I mean, it uses a lot of water, which is revenue for the community.
We do water reclamation.
Oh, what the hell?
I was just gonna say, I bet they don't use a lot of water.
We recycle water, so a typical car wash uses approximately 90 to 100 gallons of water. Currently in Oconomowoc, we average between 28 and 35 gallons of fresh water per vehicle. And now with some of the new innovation that's coming out with the recycling of water, we're hoping to get that number down to 20 to 25 per vehicle.
Or less.
Or less. So it wouldn't necessarily be a
ton, okay. Well, maybe from a green perspective, that's a good thing. But no, I'd love to see you guys come back with just more in-depth drilled down plans. Wait a few months, maybe the post office will be shut down and you can just buy.
Oh, lower your microphone. Sam.
I'm punchy.
Just out of curiosity, back to Christopher's comment, would you guys like to see the building pushed?
More towards Capitol?
Yes.
Personally, I think it's an advantage to see how many cars are in line. Okay.
There is truth to that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the traffic would be going on to Simmons to look versus being able to see it. I think it was a great idea or a good thought, but I think
Because then they're gonna have to go up and turn around.
No.
No, she's right.
Also very complicated to route enough traffic through the site with it. But again, I think the point was more along the lines of, we're willing to look at different layouts for you and help it fit into the community.
I think where you have it, it makes it a better neighbor to the post office, and gives everyone a visual.
And I did like your concept of the gateway to the village. I know some communities I've worked in, I think Sussex is an example, and Janesville, businesses who have come in where they've been at these corridors, part of their landscaping or part of the proposal too is also like, as a sort of in-kind donation or just to support the community, they've created like a welcome to downtown or welcome to the gateway. Because right when you get off 16 right there, it's such a, right, it's go left, go right, like, there's options, are you going down Capitol to do shopping at more of the commercial sector, or are you going downtown to the beach or to our local businesses? So, again, that's probably out of our purview. Maybe not signage actually, right?
No, you're fine.
So yeah, I know, I wish you guys the best, and I'd love to see more renderings. Thank you. And I think too the connection with Oconomowoc is great because we've got Profinity coming, another Oconomowoc business. So if there's memberships there, if they're coming here to enjoy the beach or whatever too, and so I think there's a lot of synergy there. Thank you.
If I may make one other comment, I think
Sure,
you
go
mentioned
ahead.
the number of car washes in the community, and I think one of the great things about having a retail district is you have choices, and you can decide, I want a touch-free car wash across the street at Quick Trip, or you know what, I really like the Chili's way of doing things, or you know what, I like the Bubbles way of doing things, and you have choices, just like a restaurant, just like a grocery store, and not only are there choices, but there's choices for the consumer based on their time available and their other desires. So from a market study standpoint, we are very confident that it would be a successful business in this.
What is the Bubbles? What is your,
What is Bubbles?
yeah, I mean, how does you were saying that if you want to go to a touch-free,
Yeah,
What kind of car wash are we? Okay, that's a great question. So, very similar to Jilly's. So we
okay,
have the conveyor in the tunnel, come out, free vacuums. Couple different distinctions or differentiators. One, we use totally different equipment. It's a slow spin equipment, so it doesn't have the really fast spinning whipping brushes that you see at most touch car washes. These have brushes, but they spin really slow, and on the ends of them they have little tiny fingers, and those go across your car, and we equate it to a hand wash. So that's the first thing. The second thing is our membership structure is very different. We do things by like a gym membership, like a family plan. So dad, mom, whatever, comes in, buys a membership, and they get it for their whole household. They can put all their cars on that one membership. So it's an extremely valuable membership, especially when we start putting it around the community for wherever you go in the Lake Country area. We've been working on another site between here and Oconomowoc. You might have maybe saw it in the paper. But what we're trying to do is hit the major arterial roads and provide a high-end differentiated service with the best value in the community for people of Lake Country. Those are the two big things. There are other things.
Definitely like locally owned.
And a family
Very
membership.
much family owned, locally owned.
kind of sold me. Let's see what you got.
You did your job.
You'd like us to come back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, with a better
I'm still a
layout.
little concerned about the size of the lot, but it's more and more the way you're setting everything up. It sounds like you do things a lot different.
Yeah, and it's you know, if you're used to Jilly's over there, I believe there's a significantly greater amount of stacking just on this plan alone already than what Jilly's has available.
Oh,
That
yes,
is correct.
absolutely.
I live over there, so yes.
Okay.
I belong to Julie's.
I want to say they don't, but
Yeah. So,
they're actually a great competitor. They're a great model. for what we do.
so we'll be looking forward to seeing you maybe next month, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. I think I'll give your car wash a try next time.
You can go in.
Okay, item E, review discussion on direction to staff regarding amendment to Village of Pewaukee zoning code for reasonable accommodations. Matt, you want to handle this one, or which Matt would like to handle this?
Well, I can start off.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, gentlemen. Thank you, everybody.
So this item is on the agenda before you tonight. It was a request from commission members to look at the role that staff can play to streamline some of the more routine requests that come before the commission. It is a strategic goal of the village board that the services that are provided by the village be as efficient and inexpensive as possible for the residents and businesses. And a couple of examples recently that brought this to the surface. There was a request for a handicap access ramp that needed approval by this body because it infringed on setbacks. And then there were some shed requests in the backyards that came before this body, also because of setback requests. Not only were there time delays for the people to implement these things in their properties, but there was added expense because you had professionals involved in reviewing them and passing that cost appropriately to the applicants.
So what you've got before you tonight are a couple of ideas or concepts that FOTH has written up for you. One would be a proposed change to zoning code that would grant staff, primarily led by me, the village administrator, but also my designee, to look at individual circumstances. I think a key portion of this idea is that there is some discretion by staff for each situation, and that in the event that staff wasn't comfortable with an automatic approval behind the scenes, it wouldn't shut off any of the other alternatives that already exist in code in order to bring them forward to this body for consideration. That was for the ADA piece, which is the first item up for consideration tonight for discussion.
So I guess the comment I would have is and I think Matt did a good job of summarizing why they're on here and the commission's direction regarding this. But what I would say is these are broken out into two separate items intentionally. The staff putting together the proposed language regarding reasonable accommodations, that is more of an area where we can see a legitimate role for staff to do those types of things because we have the backing of essentially federal law there to cover us there on a staff approval. There's an argument to be made that if somebody is experiencing undue delays through a variance procedure, going to a board of zoning appeals, or coming to conditional use and plan commission, and for whatever reason that process is taking a long time, there's an argument to be made that the village is not reasonably accommodating that applicant under the ADA. So I think from that standpoint, having a mechanism for quote-unquote quicker staff approval for specifically defined things where we can point to federal code, I think that is definitely appropriate with some of the safeguards that we put in here. So we did put together specific language in the form of what it would look like within our code, and I guess what we're looking for on the reasonable accommodation piece, and we can get to the balance with the next item, but on the reasonable accommodation piece, we're looking for feedback and direction on possibly bringing a formal ordinance to the commission next month for recommendation to the board.
Questions, comments?
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and you know, I've got a full 6 months' experience, I think, on this commission. So I'm an expert. So yeah. One of the two things that struck me, and we're talking about them tonight. So first of all, the ADA portion one, knowing the person that was going through that and forcing a delay in a decision being made when we knew it was going to be approved anyways, it just seemed like, okay, this is a perfect example where this should be streamlined, give the village administrator the authority to make a decision if it's clear enough to go ahead, instead of delaying it and adding additional cost to it with staff time. So it was one of those things that bothered me, that the village was overbearing in what they're trying to do when there is a need, and the opportunity of it being refused was next to nothing, and that could have been determined by the village administrator.
Yes, sir.
I was pretty much going to say the exact same things. I think this just makes sense. As far as for the attorney this evening, so do you need any sort of recommendation to the village board tonight, or that the staff will come back with actual proposed?
No, so because this is the first time this commission has had eyes on the actual language,
Okay.
we agendized this just for staff.
Discussion.
Staff direction, discussion from the commission, staff direction. So if you like what you see, that's great, we'll bring it back, but we wanted to have the opportunity, because this is a new issue, for full discussion, rather than present something and have potential amendments from the commission on the floor and things like that. Do the sausage making now and come back.
Any other comments? Everybody like what they're seeing?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess that's your comment.
All right.
The next item is review, discussion, and direction to staff regarding amendment to Village of Pewaukee zoning code for administrative approval of minor setback waivers. Yes.
All right, yeah, Mr. President, I'll start off with a summary again. And again, this is all part of that same request to streamline or examine the process, to streamline, make it more efficient and effective for the community, for the residents and the businesses. This one is a little bit more sensitive, as Attorney Gorlinski kind of introduced in his comments earlier, where the community, as all communities do in the state, have setbacks on properties, and to allow staff to have some sort of ability to waive them could be somewhat chaotic in the land use area. So when FOTH did their research, there was very little example in the state of other communities that allowed staff to do that. And the one example they had was a 10% variation from the setbacks. And conceptually speaking, what most folks, when they propose construction, they propose to build it to the very limits that we allow. So what you're essentially just creating is a new setback. So this is a little bit more sensitive or touchy of a path for revision. And those are my introductory comments.
And I guess I would take the handoff there that staff has discussed this, and I think the important takeaway from Mark's memo is that going along the lines of staff approval or waiver of setbacks or other sorts of those types of site layout zoning codes, those would be the exception, not the rule in Wisconsin. I mean, we don't see that, and we don't see it for a reason. And I think somebody made a comment at staff level, and I forget who it is, and I wish I remembered so I could attribute it to them, but if we're looking at, or if we're seeing applications come through for these waivers on these setbacks, maybe the problem is with, and this is not any application that's come through here, but maybe it's an opportunity then to look at the setback instead of having a staff essentially procedure where they can just waive it. Because what we're doing here is, if we're allowing staff to do it, you're taking away authority that has historically in this state and in this community been vested with either a board of zoning appeals, if it's a variance type situation, or this board, in the event it's a conditional use or something else where we have decided that it should come here rather than the board of zoning appeals. And we do that for a reason. There's something to be said for having, if we have a zoning code and having it enforced, if we're going to move off of that for a specific reason, there's something to be said for having an open discussion in an open forum, in a quasi-judicial manner, really, for an applicant to be able to present themselves to not just one staff member, but appointed or elected officials and make their case and tell them why they should not have to comply with whatever zoning requirement is here. So we have these zoning requirements for a reason. And the law is pretty clear that if you want a variance from any setback or other requirements, it's the burden on the applicant to show it. And historically that burden has been in the form of, like I said, a presentation to multiple people rather than staff, and there's many reasons for it. So I guess I'll be the champion for keeping this as is in the historic context and keeping it in front of this board or the Board of Zoning Appeals or whatever procedure may be applicable. I don't take a position usually on policy decisions, but I can't endorse something where we're looking at a wholesale staff waiver approach to zoning regulations.
Again, is one of those that kind of when a Home Depot shed that costs $3,500 is being placed in the backyard, we're charging for a building permit fee, we're charging for staff time And I don't recall if it was a foot variance or whatever it was. It just seemed like it was a bureaucratic nightmare to go through for something that didn't involve footings, didn't involve a major change, something that could be moved or removed rather easily. I understand the need to be black and white on this. I don't disagree with that at all. Is there a need to possibly look at the setback in a backyard? I don't know if it's possible to do that or not.
It is, and that's the approach I would take, is
Yeah.
looking at the structural definitions in the code, rather than just saying, well, if we don't like it, we'll give it to staff. I'd say, let's take a look at how do we define structure in those districts. 'Cause maybe there's a way to word it where a structure where there's not footings and it's not a permanent structure, where we could exempt that from the setback and have either a zero lot line or whatever. Changing those, the mechanics of the ordinance is a much, in my opinion, preferable way to go about it. I think the planner would agree. It looks like he
Yeah,
wants to say
and
something.
just to kind of reiterate what the village attorney said, when we look at land use and setbacks and the way ordinances are established in the Wisconsin state statute, variances in their nature are really delineated to a board of appeals or conditional uses through this body. And there's really no mechanism set up with under state law to give us authority to administratively do them. The ADA one works well because you have federal statutes that grant that ability to do them. To Attorney Glincy's, the ordinance already has language in it that exempts out certain things from setback requirements or places special setback requirements on them. For example, like fences under 4.5 feet tall are allowed at one setback versus fences over 4.5 feet tall. That's built right into the code. So if a setback variance or a reduction in what we require for setbacks is something this board is interested in looking at, I think that's the right way to do it. A 2-stall garage, yeah, we want that sucker at 10 feet. But a 90 square foot shed that does not have a permanent foundation, maybe it's a 5-foot setback. That's the appropriate way, I think, to do it.
Okay.
That gives staff that backing of this is what the code says. When you get into arbitrary and capricious, when staff starts making decisions, it puts the community at risk because you have that arbitrary decision.
Yep.
Because I know you have a lot of other communities on your books. Looking at our setbacks right now on some of the stuff, mainly like these sheds and stuff like that, are we about right in that realm of the majority, or are we really way out there?
So I would say you're kind of in the middle. 10 feet, and I'm just thinking like B5 district or R5 district. I'm trying to pick a district to think about in my head. 10 feet is probably a little larger than some of our communities. Some probably allow 5 feet. And then especially as you get into more, I'm going to call them your historical residential areas where you have smaller lots, 5 feet's probably potentially appropriate in what we see commonly. Some even go as low as 3 feet. So 10's a little high in those. But in your more modern residential subdivisions type of development you're seeing, 10 feet is probably appropriate. And we say these, those we're seeing 10 to 15 to 20 feet. So in your urban residential areas, that lower setback makes sense. Just the context of that part of the community, lower setbacks make sense. Your, urban subdivision type, newer modern subdivisions, that 10 feet probably is appropriate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so I know you said that you couldn't find many other communities that had sort of relinquished this authority. So does it mean though you did find?
We found one single community that allows a reduction, but at a very specific rate. It allows a 10% reduction in that setback requirement as long as the spirit is upheld of the ordinance, and then it actually requires landscaping. So say you're at a 10, and think about it, 10%. You're at a 10-foot setback. It's only 1 foot that's being reduced, and you have to add landscaping. So 10 to 9 feet, and you have to add landscaping. the code doesn't allow any more discretion than that. If you got a 5-foot setback, you get 6 inches of relief. You get a 10-foot setback, you get a foot of relief, and you have to compensate for that reduction through landscaping. And all the communities we researched, that was the only example of a minor variance, minor waiver, and they called it a waiver because you can't call it a variance. Variance is a Board of Appeals thing. That waiver could be done administratively for that 10%.
So we'd really be,
And it was specifically tied to accessory structures, these, shed.
we'd really be sort of paving the way as a first.
Yeah. And I mean, at that rate, like the way their code is set up, they might as well just reduce their setback by that same amount because it's always going to be granted. Somebody wants it, they're always getting that 6 inches or foot.
I would also be interested too, and I don't know if we could put this in the ordinance or the legality of it, again, just to provide, I mean, if this was a route we wanted to go, to provide additional oversight, I mean, I don't know what our code calls for the chair of the plan commission. Is it always the village president? Is that?
Yes.
It is? So I know, our current village president has always had a good relationship with the administrators. My understanding is they meet, like every Monday morning or at least once a week. I mean, I don't know if we could put it in, I mean, if we decide to go down this route, just spitballing, that, if the staff does make a recommendation, if we were to go this route, that it would also have to be signed off by the village president / chair of the planning commission. This is sort of there's an elected official there, someone who's accountable directly to the people. That would be my only thought. Or, I don't even know, again, this might get into like a walking quorum situation, but if it was like staff is planning to approve this waiver, we email the plan commission, you've got 48 hours or 72 hours. If anyone has objection, then we'll kick it up to be reviewed. Otherwise, I don't know if that gets around the spirit of.
Yeah, it really doesn't. The first part of what you propose is legally doable. I don't know if it satisfies my concerns as to the term. I don't want to say backroom dealings, but really it's decisions being made out of the light of a public hearing, which when you're making a variance from what you've told everybody in the public that this is the requirement, and now you're stepping back from that, well, historically, okay, we need, whoever's asking for us to step back from that, they need to make their case so other people can know, okay, if it's granted, why was it granted? And if it's not, why was it not? There's a procedure and a reason for that process in place. So I think even adding, an elected official, that helps. I don't think it helps enough, though, to satisfy my concerns. And then the latter part, I think that would be a walking quorum issue. So I wouldn't even entertain that.
That's all I had.
Yeah. I would like staff to look at the potential of changing the setbacks for, I forget the terminology used, the non-permanent foundation.
Yeah, we could research a little bit of wording and find out maybe some examples.
See it, and changing that setback to allow structures without having to go through what has gone through in the past.
I think that's a much more reasonable approach, to be honest with you. Not to say what was proposed is unreasonable or anything like that. This is the purpose for the discussion, but I think the preferable way to go about it would be to look at what we have on the books now and change it for the community-wide rather than giving approval to staff.
Ladies, have you had any questions or comments?
No, I agree with changing the setbacks and looking at that, not giving the authority to the staff for this.
I think we just got hit twice. We got hit with the ADA and we got hit with the non-permanent structure back to back, and we were kind of like, okay, what's going on here? I definitely thrilled about the ADA portion of it. I would rather look at something where we talk about the non-permanent structure, giving staff that aspect, and then leaving everything else back up to us.
All right.
Or-
Is there any other, yes.
Well, I was just going to ask a couple of clarifying questions to help give some direction. Immediately, my mind goes to thinking about things like, so there's square footage requirements that potentially trigger foundation requirements. We could look at, maybe structures under a certain square footage. Something that also comes to mind that impacts neighbors is like, okay, maybe you say it's 100 square feet, but a and I'm just going to use extreme examples here, a 20-foot long by 5-foot deep building has a very different impact than a 10 by 10 building. We could also look at kind of the linear requirements, maximum size or minimum, keeping it under 12, square feet on a side or something. Are those the kind of things that make sense to you of, looking at maximum sizes? You can do a building up to X square feet with no side longer than, pick a number, 12 feet. Is that kind of in line with what you're thinking? That way we're getting at those small, less impactful type structures going into the reduced setback?
Yeah, I guess I look at it, and the specific examples that I was concerned about was the shed.
Yep.
Okay, and in my mind, there is a standard size shed which is probably sold, 60-70% of the times.
Yep.
That might be the standard as far as square footage and width or size that we're talking. I don't know. Okay. But it seems to me that would make sense. It just seems like when we're talking about something like that is not a foundation,
Yep.
it is a poured slab, or if we could make that simpler for citizens to implement that without, again, having to create gray areas, go with a black and white setback rule for that type of instance. With that standard type shed, we should go for it.
Yeah,
We should look into that.
we'll do some research. I think there's enough there to work with.
Would it be easier to just to say a permanent foundation?
I would want to check with the city building inspectors of what triggers a foundation requirement under the UDC building code.
Because I
And then-
have seen some that have posts in the ground and then they have
Yep.
a wood floor.
Yep.
But it is movable. They can take it out and move it. It's
Yeah.
not,
And
and the foundation gets taken out.
Yeah. Typically, building code triggers at a square footage threshold,
Okay.
where then it has to be put on a foundation. So I think just give me a little bit of time to look into it, and then we can bring you some information back at maybe if at the next meeting, if we can get it done in time.
Okay.
And then start to go for an ordinance from there.
Thank you. Appreciate it, everybody. Citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to share their opinions with commission members on any topic they choose. However, due to Wisconsin open meeting laws, the commission is not able to answer questions or respond to your comments. All comments should be directed to the commission. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Speakers are asked to use the podium and state their name and address. Sir, did you have a comment?
Maybe I should just
okay.
can I make a statement?
Sure.
For those that may or may not know, I am going to be retiring, and that's going to happen May 2nd. Jake Shelby is going to be my replacement. Jake is also the engineer for the village of Greendale, so he works in a couple places on that, as well as projects. He's doing our annual road program this year for the village. And so this is actually my last plan commission because there's nothing going to be on the agenda for April.
Yeah.
So
How long has it been?
well, I started in January of 1995, but I took a hiatus and Mike Steiner was here for some time. So altogether I've got 17 years in. So it's been like, it was a bunch in the middle, like six right away, and then the last 11 years. But I feel like I've been here the whole time. I honestly work with Mike. I work in this area, so I'm through Pewaukee a lot, and so I'll have a special place in my heart for Pewaukee and the people I met and just all the excitement here. I looked back a little bit. The population when I started was about, I think it was like 5,600, and now it's something like 8,600 or something like that. So it's gone up about 50% just since I've been here. And for those that are really young, when I started, there really wasn't anything out past Highway 16 on the north side. I think there was 2 farms out there, and that was it. And look at it now. It's just amazing. I love to look at old maps and see, like, oh my gosh, what have we done to this land? But I do appreciate what Pewaukee has. They've enriched my life, and I've enjoyed it immensely. I can tell you that.
I know over the many years that I've been part of the Park and Rec Department, we utilize your expertise, and you have always were great to work with. And the interactions with the village board and everything, always been terrific, and congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
great.
Congratulations.
And just so you know, he did have dark hair when he started. I remember that.
He hasn't had dark hair ever.
See, I look just like him back then.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working with him for many, many years. Damn, everybody's leaving me. Getting upset.
Maybe you ought to retire, Jeff.
No, don't say that too loud. My wife might be watching. Okay, item 8 is adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
I will second that motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are hereby adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
All right, see what you got.
It's a very, very good meeting.